It's time to get all set for Sunday, a podcast for busy and distracted Catholics with your hosts, Scott Williams and Jeff Traylor.
When I hear the coffee brewing, I think, what the heck we doing? Because I got barely any sleep last night. As the diaper bag I pack with Hot Wheels dollies and some snacks, I say a prayer there'll be a seat in the crime room this time. It's alright, cause I'm all set for Sunday. It's alright, cause I'm all set for. It's alright, cause I'm all set for. It's alright, cause I'm all set for Sunday.
Welcome to All Set for Sunday, a podcast for busy and distracted Catholics to be a little more prepared for Sunday Mass. My name is Scott Williams. My co-host is Jeff Traylor. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Scott. How are you?
I'm outstanding.
Yeah?
How are you?
I'm great. Happy 4th of July.
Happy.
We just came off a 4th of July weekend. It's just a nice little celebration of our country.
Got all your fingers?
I do. I'm not a big fireworks guy.
Yeah.
People don't like that about me, but
it's okay.
my family, even my wife, they're all like, let's do fireworks. I'm like, I've had some scares. I'm good.
Not a line item in our budget either. But Father Johnson, how are you?
Just fine. Great.
You a big firework guy?
No, not really. Particularly now since you have to wait to a pretty late hour in order to effectively do fireworks.
I don't mind watching fireworks, but it's also not one of those things that I'm like desperate to go do. And this fits right in the category of like parades. I'm not a big parade guy. And my wife is like, it's because you don't like fun. Like, you just don't like joy. You don't like when other people are happy. And so it's a big point of contention in our family.
We've been several times, just a couple times by happenstance and a couple times on purpose, but driving around 465 is really fun when like 4th of July at night, because like everybody's just doing their own like
Friday night
backyard
we just did this,
firework.
We were just doing this coming back from a concert Friday night, and it was every little municipality, or you can't really tell who. It's just the neighbor who went ham versus some local, county fair or something like that.
Yeah, I've always wanted to like see fireworks from an airplane too. I don't know if that'd be kind of
like look down and see them.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I always think like seeing things from different perspectives. But I also heard on the news last week that a Delta flight got hit by a firework in Chicago. And I don't know, like, how does that happen?
Maybe landing.
I mean, I would assume so, but that'd be a pretty impressive firework if it was
That'd be
cruising altitude.
Yeah.
I mean, they make some fireworks to get up there. So
yeah,
we learned we've got a great view out of the back of our house, and we learned that on Friday night and Saturday night we could sit out there and like you could see small towns off in the distance that were doing their whole fireworks shows. And
Oh,
we
really?
could just watch them. It was great. Yeah.
Well, speaking of fireworks, 14th Sunday of Ordinary Time.
Oh man, really getting after it.
Ready for the 2-minute drill?
Are we ready?
Yeah.
It's actually the 15th.
That's what I said.
Yeah, we're on the 15th.
Sorry.
No worries.
I did the right one. I just wanted it to be known. 15th Sunday in Ordinary Time.
I did too, as a matter of fact.
Oh, good.
Just left my book up here.
Our first reading comes from Isaiah chapter 55. So God is comparing his word to rain and snow that water the earth. So he says, just as the rain never falls without helping crops grow, God's word never returns empty. It always accomplishes his purpose, even if we don't see the results right away. So it's a nice reminder that God is always at work, even when growth feels slow. I thought it was really funny that this was the reading, because as we were starting the podcast here, I looked down. Father Eric has his tea, as he always does, and his little tea bags have like little Snapple quotes and facts on them. And this one says, without storms and rain, life would cease to be. I was like, well, that's interesting with our reading. Do you pick your tea bags based on the readings?
I honestly don't think I've ever read one. So there you go.
Yeah. I didn't know what the other one says. Is that
The worst enemy we have is our own fear.
Ooh. Well, let's see what St. Paul has to say. Seed that falls on good ground will yield a fruitful harvest. That's a mumbler, but that's a long one for a Sunday. Our second reading comes from Romans chapter 8. So St. Paul reminds us that our present struggles are nothing compared with the glory of God and what the glory has in store for us. He paints a beautiful picture of all creation eagerly awaiting redemption, groaning like it's ready for a fresh start. And we join in that hopeful waiting. We trust that God is bringing new life and that the best is still yet to come. So not quite the teabag wisdom, but pretty good nonetheless.
Still got a gospel. There's a chance.
We do. There is. Man, and we got a heck of a gospel. Our gospel is Matthew chapter 13, 1-23. Father, are we doing short form or long form?
Long form.
Is that what you were hoping to hear?
Are you always a long form?
I'm always a long form.
We find that there are two camps of priests, always short form, always long form. There's not really an in-between. On the day Jesus went out, the long form ones seem to have deacons. I want to point that out. But on the day that Jesus went out to the house and sat by the sea,
Deacon long form.
large crowds gathered around him that he got in a boat and sat down. And the whole crowd stood along the shore, and he spoke to them at length in parables, saying, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seed fell on the path, and birds came up and ate it. Some fell on rocky ground where it had little soil. It sprang up at once because the soil was not deep. And when the sun rose, it was scorched, and it withered for lack of roots. Some seeds fell on the thorns, where the thorns grew up and choked it. And some seeds fell on rich soil and produced fruit, 100 or 60 or 30-fold. Whoever has ears ought to hear. The disciples approached him. Why do you speak to them in parables? He said to them in reply, because knowledge of the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven has been granted to you, but to them it has not been granted. To anyone who has, more will be given, and he will grow rich. For anyone who has not, even what he has will be taken away. This is why I speak to them in parables, because they look but do not see, and hear but do not listen or understand. Isaiah's prophecy is fulfilled in them, which says, you shall indeed hear but not understand. You shall indeed look but never see. Gross is the heart of this people. They will hardly hear with their ears. They have closed their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and be converted, and I heal them. But blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. Amen, I say to you, many prophets and righteous people long to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it. Hear then the parable of the sower. The seed sown on the path is the one who hears the word of the kingdom without understanding it, and the evil one comes and steals away what was sown in his heart. The seed sown on rocky ground is the one who hears the word and receives it at once with joy, but he has no root and lasts only for a time. When some tribulation or persecution comes because of the word, he immediately falls away. The seed sown among the thorns is the one who hears the word, but then the worldly anxiety and the lure of riches choke the word, and it bears no fruit. But the seed sown on rich soil is the one who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and yields 100 or 60 or 30-fold. I'll tell you what.
That was good.
It'd be great if Jesus would go long form on his parables more often. We might not have a podcast, but I like these full-on explanations. This is kind of helpful sometimes.
That's good.
I need to review the tea bag too.
No,
I don't think we got it.
Don't think so.
No.
Father, what are you preaching on this weekend?
Well, I think there's a number of ways that this can be approached. I'm not sure. I think one of the general ways that this gospel is often dealt with is to focus on the cultivation of the soil of our hearts. And I think that's pretty legitimate in terms of trying to prepare ourselves to receive the word. I do think that there's a warning in the reading, too, that when we focus on the cultivation of our hearts, that sometimes we can see kind of the response to God as ultimately being about us and what it is that we do rather than the grace and the action of God himself. I think the first reading's a warning against that God's word, when he bestows it, will be effective and will bring about its yield. And I think, I was sitting with, as you were just kind of reading and kind of looking at the explanation of the different types of ground, the things that are brought up are not necessarily things that we do to ourselves. And so one of them is anxiety, the anxiety of life. I just thought about it, but I used to be scared to death about speaking in front of other people, which is funny because I do it all the time now.
Yeah, you're very good at it.
But just scared to death. And I remember my very first homiletic class, I'm giving my first homily in front of my classmates and just shook and was just kind of a mess. And one of my classmates in the comments, the very first comment was one of my classmates said, Eric, don't be so afraid. And don't be nervous. And another classmate turned to him and said, that is about the least helpful advice I think I've ever heard. And there's a truth in that. It's like, how do you just not be nervous? How do you not
just don't
encounter those sorts of things? And ultimately, I think, with the anxieties of life and stuff, we don't deal with that by just deciding not to be anxious. We deal with that, I think, by entering in to relationship with others and to relationship with God in a manner that puts that in perspective and removes that fear from us. We can't just do those things on our own. We need God's grace. When we face persecution in life or the allure of other things, the thing that keeps us steady and rooted is a remembrance of who we are and where we're going, but that is what God brings about, not what we bring about. And so I think, as I'm just talking, I think, the cultivation of the soil isn't so much about that we make ourselves less anxious, that we take away the experience of persecution, that we just simply control the allure of what is around us. We will seek those things if we're not rooted in something else that fills us. When Jesus speaks of casting out demons and they go out into the world and the heart of the person that has been redeemed in that is suddenly cleaned up, but it's empty, and the demons come back. And the latter case is worse than the first, that if we don't fill that space with something else, then we will seek out those things. And so I think it's about kind of the commitment to being receptive and open to what it is that God does. And maybe that's the way to kind of move between what it is that we're invited to and what it is that we allow God to do. Because it's God that brings about the change in us. It's God that brings about the harvest that he wishes to take place in our lives. It's God that casts away our fear, that frees us from anxiety, that allows us simply to trust that wherever it is that we go, he is there and with us, and he will bring about our good.
So you're in your example, you had this fear and anxiety about speaking in front of people. How did you, obviously the first piece of advice was not great. Was there another piece of advice that was filling that void that did help you?
It took a while my very first time that I preached in the theology chapel in front of all of once I was ordained a deacon, I was pretty wrapped up. The priest next to me says, "Breathe in Jesus, breathe out Satan." And I said, "I can't breathe." And the homily came off fine. I was fine. But at one point, I was using a text at that point, and at one point I picked up the page to turn it, and it just was flopping like crazy. I mean, that was there. I think really in the end what comes about is the decision to step into it, and then the realization that I didn't die.
Yeah.
And so, now you do it. I mean, I'm in front of people every day, so it's just not even something I think about anymore.
When I know I've known you for a long time. I didn't know you like before that. But you're a musician, like you play guitar. I know that you were doing things in front of people. Was it just the speaking piece, or?
I think so. I mean, there was a nervousness.
Sorry, now we're just in that.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's something because I had something in my hands. I don't know quite what it was, but I will say
you should
that
preach and play guitar more often.
Just do that.
That'd be awesome, actually.
Wear it on my back and then swing it around. Yeah, I'm sure that
reminds me of a riff I know.
Yeah. I don't know about that. I think it did help me in terms of I could generally maintain my composure, but I could feel it. I mean, I'd be pretty tense and stuff like that. One thing that was helpful, Archbishop Beekline, that was his main obstacle to being ordained. He actually got pretty close to leaving because he would get physically ill when he had to get up and talk in front of people. And his ultimate decision was, I will never seek out opportunities to present to other people, but I will say yes when I'm asked to do it and step into that.
Was he a novice at that point?
I don't know when that started or when that decision was made, but he would talk about that when he told his vocation story. That was one of the things that he.
I was going to say, I remember having a conversation with him about that one time, where he was like, "I chose to become a Benedictine monk. This bishop thing wasn't really on my radar."
Right.
That's so funny. When I was in youth ministry, I can't remember the exact scenario, but I'd been in youth ministry at this parish for well over a year now, so I had known these kids, but I was giving some sort of talk witness at a youth group night, but this time I had a guitar. And I did learn how to play one chord on the guitar. So I played a chord, and then I started to give a talk. And then at the end, I just hung up the guitar, and we moved on to the next thing. The kids were just off the charts irritated that why did you have this guitar? I was like, I don't know how to play the guitar.
It was just my prop.
So it was my prop, but the message of the story was something about false expectations. We build up our own expectations about this. But that was one of my that was a good time. I don't think I have anything.
That's classic Scott right there. Just okay. So I joked about it after I read this gospel, but oftentimes, right, we're getting readings and gospel that anybody in the pews really needs some interpretation of. We need we get the full explanation here, right? There isn't a lot of depth that has to be found here. It's which most of Jesus' teachings, right? Once we dive into them, we know that it's very simple. It's right here. Is that a challenge for you when you're preaching? it's one thing when something has like, you can go 1,000 different directions with it, right? And say, well, here's where we're going. Is it a little more challenging when it's just all laid out like this and you're like, well, everybody check this out.
It is all
Did you guys
laid
read
out.
that? That was great.
It was awesome.
Right.
He did it for us. Yeah. No, I still think that most of the time somewhere in the readings, there's always another entry point. And I think like here is one could spend a fair amount of time on the discussion between Jesus and the disciples on the meaning of parables that we have right in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. Why do you teach in parables? And what exactly is Jesus seeing there? So I think that's there. I personally, for me, it is sometimes it actually is feasts that you preach over and over again that are harder to kind of re-enter. Mm-hmm. When I was a chaplain in a high school at Bishop Chittard, most all of our all-school masses were Marian, because we usually were, if there was a holy day in that month, we associated with that solemnity or something like that, and so you were hitting the same readings and kind of a lot of the same themes over and over and over and over again. And sometimes that was a bigger challenge for me. Sometimes the big feasts, like how many different ways are you going to talk about Easter or Christmas? Or sometimes I think that can be a little harder to enter into.
That's a fair point. My family is good friends with Father Tim Wichaskala, and he was our pastor at St. Mark and then the chaplain coordinator at Roncalli. And so I especially, but my family as well, we saw him, but a lot of time, like you just saw him celebrate feast days, on a regular basis. And so it was a running joke with my girls about like which Beatles song did Father Tim preach about, and what did he say his mom told him in the end.
Yeah,
but yeah,
and you do get into when you put on top of that the fact that it's pretty commonly talked about that we only have a few homilies that are in us at any given point in time, and we preach on a lot of the same things for. Well, so when you're doing that, and then you're dealing with the same set of readings or the same set of feasts, and you start to think of, all right, how do I need to be open to looking at this a little bit differently than I have? But sometimes that's the bigger challenge.
I remember when Cardinal Tobin was here, he had a joke. The last four letters of his order was, I think, CSSR or something like that. I can't remember the exact acronym, but he said something along the lines that actually stands for certain sermons repeated regularly or something like that.
Somebody on the podcast one time told us that their homiletics teacher told them good preachers have 3 homilies and great ones have 1, and that that they just know how to deliver it.
Yeah, I mean, even just being able to bring in the your own Christian witness into like you just did, that made it super relatable. Jeff and I had more questions about that specific thing, but that allowed us to put rubber to the road on this specific thing and relate it, because I'm thinking of things in my world that I struggle with and where I can cultivate my own soil in that area. So I think it works.
Yeah.
All right. You ready for dumb questions?
I am. This it rolls in perfectly with this. So we talked a little bit before the podcast started, but this last weekend was new assignment weekend. So all of our priests in the diocese who are moving around had new assignments, and we had some guests in town. So we live right by Francis Sinclair. We ended up going to Mass over at St. Francis Sinclair. Father Bob Robeson was there on his opening weekend, and I love Father Bob dearly. It was great to see him, and I walked in and he said, "You guys go here now?" And I said, "No, Father, we live in your boundaries, so you're kind of saddled with me, but we're still at St. Mark." But when he preached, and then he said, you guys are going to learn a lot about me, but he said here's 3 things you should know about me as your pastor. And it made me think that's probably, when you're going to a new assignment, you have to walk in and figure out how do I set a tone, right? How do I let everybody know here? But my question to you, Father, is what are 3 things that you think, and if people want to know about you as a priest, they say, what helps shape Father Eric Johnson as a priest? What are 3 things that you would
That's a
share
hard question. I don't know that I've thought that much about that.
Yeah,
typically when I've stepped
Blame
in,
Father Bob.
I tell my story.
Or Father Bob's.
Father Bob's, it was so great. He said, "I love being a priest." He said, "I thank God multiple times every single day that he allowed me to this journey." And he talked about how he loves being that because he said, you as my congregation are entitled to my love. And that's what I want to do, is pour that out for you. He said, "There's nothing more joyful to me on earth than Jesus in the Eucharist and the miracle that happens on the altar here." And then I guess the third, that was the three. It was like, I love being a priest. I will love you all. And like, I will pour that love out to you. And in any way I can. And if there is a way I can, come tell me. And just his love of the Eucharist. It was beautiful. It was simple and basic, but man, you walked out of there like, okay, everybody in the room, you could tell just was like, okay, this is our new pastor and this is great. And I don't know that there's anything proprietary about those three things, right? Like, but
well, some of those would, you say that, I mean, that would echo with me. I think every place I've gone, I've indicated that part of being their pastor is I'll strive to love them as best I can. And I see that, being a pastor, I've been in multiple roles where I've served in communities where I'm not the pastor, not just as an associate, but in other ways, either as sacramental minister. And there is a difference. When you're the pastor, I didn't lay awake at night worried about what was happening in a particular community when I wasn't the pastor as much, simply because
there were other people
that were worrying about that and staying up at night doing that. And I don't want to say that being a pastor means that I have sleepless nights all the time. That's not true. But you care about, when you care about a community because it belongs to you in that way, similar to your own family, there are times that you find yourself just very concerned about what's happening or a certain person or things along those lines. And I think that's, being a pastor is very relational. Even that amplifies that even more so than simply being a priest. And one who is charged, all priests are charged with the care of souls, but pastors in particular have a relationship with the community. I do remember being at a community and about 3 years in, celebrating Mass. I think it was Ash Wednesday. And I remember sitting up there and just coming to a realization as I looked out over the community that I knew people in that community, I knew who they were, and I knew what they were dealing with. And I was coming off of an experience of being a vocation director where I was circuit riding for 2 years, where every weekend I was in a different parish and stuff. And it was just a profound awareness because I sat for 2 years in front of communities that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And there was something that was really very different about that sort of experience. So I think that kind of witness to love and the desire to be in relationship with the community and its people. I think for me too, transparency is something that I've spoken about. And it's kind of important to me that the people feel like they know what's happening within their community, not just in terms of the business end of things, but just generally what's going on. And I do think that is part of what to own something as my own, as my community of faith means, to somehow to know it, not just know about it, but to know it. And I had an uncle that was circulating between 3 different parishes for a while and was trying to discern.
As a pastor?
No, just he and his
did
wife.
have that uncle too.
I did have that uncle too, but we're going to 3 different parishes on a regular basis, just kind of moving around. And he, said, we need to settle, but I like this about this community, like this about this community. And I think really ultimately was, you just got to pick. Until you pick, it's not yours. You will always kind of have I like this and I don't like this. And until you kind of invest yourself in something, it just kind of has an abstraction to it. And I think the kind of knowing the community, getting to know people, being invested, that is how a person starts to feel like the parish belongs to them or they belong to the parish in that particular way. I'd say those things kind of come to mind.
I've heard it said once that, like, if you're struggling with being at your parish, maybe that means that your parish needs you to be at that parish in a very specific way, if that makes sense. What advice would you give to, obviously you would never know this of your own experience, but what advice would you give someone if they were struggling with, like, their pastor or a change, or, like, maybe their pastor had been there for 12 years and they moved on and they were just heartbroken about it and the next person wasn't meeting their expectations?
It was just a different person, yeah.
Yeah. What advice would you give to that Joe parishioner?
Well, one, I think they do need to mourn it. It's hard to lose.
Yeah.
It's hard on a priest to step away from a parish that they've been invested in for a long time. It's part of the
They ask you to marry the church, and then they ask you to change churches every...
And it's more often than every 12 usually.
Yeah,
It's
12, 6, 3.
But it's also the people that are there. because you develop a relationship, and the people in the pews develop a relationship with the person that they see every Sunday. And
it's different than the news broadcaster that you.
right. I went to a parish one time, and I had an older couple who was very close to my predecessor, in part because he was there when they lost their son, and that just was very important to him. And when that transition happened, I remember they came up to me one time and were complimenting me. I mean, you're doing great. We want to love you, but we really love Father Bill. And I said, it's okay to love him. I hope at some point you can find a little left over for me. That love doesn't have to be. It's like with your kids.
Yeah.
It's not like love is just something that we have in a certain quantity.
Yeah.
And we can only give so much of it. Love expands itself. So, but there's a challenge you can have oftentimes when there's a change in pastors, or priests, there's a significant change in personality and how people relate. And that can take some time. I think time is part of it, is trying to just kind of recognize that when we transition, any transition, even if it's one we look forward to, there's uncertainty in that.
Yeah.
And that puts us in a place where we don't feel we have as much grounding, but we have to kind of allow the time to pass. I was just talking to somebody this morning about translation changes, and you grow into those translation changes.
Is this like with the new liturgy of the hours?
Yeah. And so looking at the new translation for the Psalms and stuff like that, and your first encounter with that, even if you're like, well, I agree with this, I remember the first time I read through some of the prayers in the new translation of the Missal years ago. It was just so different from what I knew.
Yeah.
And yet now that's more natural to me than what I was praying before.
Yeah.
And so there's a time of kind of having to sit with that. Yeah. And stuff like that. And so you just, I think that's part of it.
Francis, our Pope.
Yeah.
I did find out the other day that my deacon let me know that I said Francis instead of Leo, probably for the first time. Not during the prayer. I was talking about how the Holy Father had invited us to pray for our country as we were coming up on our 250th anniversary.
Heart, so.
And I think in one of the masses I said it, and it's Pope Francis, and so he laughed at me and told me that. That's better than when John Paul II died. It took me a year.
We talked about it on here, how you were really worried about how long it was going to take you to get it. But
yeah, it's funny. So this is the only time that I'm aware of that I've done it.
Okay.
It's what you know.
All right. You got any more?
No, that was really it.
Father, thank you again.
You bet.
Always a joy.
Yeah. Good to be with you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
It's alright, cause I'm all set for. It's alright, cause I'm all set for. It's alright, cause I'm all set for Sunday.